Innovation Rockstars. Innovation Rockstars.
Today with us, passionate aeronauticist and frequent flyer Sven Taubert from Lufthansa Technik. Together with Sven, we shed light on the question of the future of aviation in the context of global warming and try to find an answer to the question of how green and sustainable aviation of the future can actually be. In our new episode of Innovation Rockstars, you can find out which technological developments are in focus and whether they are really always as green and sustainable as they seem at first glance.
Now on Innovation Rockstars.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Rockstar interviews. I am Chris Mühlroth, and in this episode, I'm very happy to welcome Sven Taubert from Lufthansa Technik. We had already interviewed Sven in German, and because his statements were really inspiring and also meaningful, we decided to record this episode in English as well. Together with Sven, we discussed the future of aviation, a topic that is, of course, becoming increasingly important and that will have a significant impact on the future, both in our private and also in our business life. And the questions are, how much sustainability can we actually expect in aviation? What technologies will help us to reach this goal? And how does a professional foresight and market intelligence unit at Lufthansa Technik actually contribute to all of this? Now, let's have a chat about these topics. Sven, thanks very much for taking the time.
Hi, Christian. Thanks for having me.
All right. Before we start the actual discussion, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, about your career steps leading up to Lufthansa Technik, and where your passion for aviation actually comes from?
I started actually as a graphic designer far back, and when I had to decide what to study after school, I didn't decide to study art. I decided to study aerospace engineering, go more in a technical direction. I started then in Stuttgart and in Tokyo, aerospace engineering. After that, I decided to go to a consultant agency, started there my innovation career more or less, because my first job was to get Airbus to the TRL process, technology readiness level process, a professional innovation process invented by the NASA. After a short while, I decided I would like to switch to the big company. So I was working as a project leader and later on a project portfolio leader for Airbus in the innovation department in Hamburg and in Toulouse. And after 5 years, I somehow reached a certain ceiling of Airbus and decided to do a world trip. That didn't really work out as Lufthansa Technik called and said they would start a new innovation department in Lufthansa Technik to professionalize innovation in the company. And that was a too good offer to start in a big corporation, a whole new innovation department, without any processes in place. So you had a blank sheet approach there. Worked there then for 3.5 years, and then switched 2 years ago to my current position as head of corporate foresight and market intelligence in Lufthansa Technik.
So you had to start from scratch, right? Which can be a good thing. Now, most certainly, everyone is familiar with Lufthansa as an airline, but you are at Lufthansa Technik, right? So what does Lufthansa Technik do exactly, and how is your role positioned in the organization?
So Lufthansa Technik is part of the Lufthansa Group. The group is mainly known, as you said, for our airlines, which is not just Lufthansa, it's also Swiss or Austrian, Eurowings. But Lufthansa has many more companies, and one of these, we call them service companies, is called Lufthansa Technik. We are the world leader in MRO services, meaning maintenance, repair, and overhaul. So we do more or less everything to keep the aircraft flying. In that role, we are not just maintaining Lufthansa as customer. We have around 800 airlines as customers currently, having 5,000 aircraft under exclusive contract. For everybody not familiar with aviation, that's around 1/6 of the world fleet. Besides that, we are also doing development of products, so OEM development, and we have a VVIP area, meaning people who are so rich or governments that they can afford their own aircrafts, and aircrafts we meaning really big aircraft, so we meaning jumbo jets, for example. So we are building these private super jets. Interesting company, a lot of different stuff to do, and in my role I'm responsible for the market intelligence and the foresight for the whole Lufthansa Technik group there, so all the departments.
Okay, now let's dive into the topic of sustainability, specifically in aviation, of course. In that context, topics such as the ecological footprint, reduction of carbon emissions, and sustainable behavior in general are gaining lots of momentum. For example, I recently learned that about 5% of global warming is triggered by aviation, but only 10% of the world's population actually has access to commercial aviation, right? So expecting this number to increase in the future, the demand for sustainability is of course getting stronger. Now, how sustainable and environmentally friendly can aviation actually become?
I would start with a quote of my Lufthansa Group CEO, Carsten Spohr, who said the last drop of petrol is probably running through an aircraft engine, and which sounds in the first moment a little bit depressing, is actually a realistic approach on that. Jet fuel is a super efficient energy source. So it's liquid, on a very wide range of temperatures. It's super stable. So, compared to the Hollywood, image you have from fuel, you can actually, put a lighter in it and it's not burning. So it's very stable, to transport. And it's very, very high energy efficient, meaning very less kilograms for a lot of watt you're getting out of it, compared to other sources like hydrogen or batteries, for example. So our current problem is that the fuel-based system we're currently using is already very, very efficient. So it's much more efficient than cars actually, or ship engines. So on that technology we are kind of on a ceiling. So every step we are currently taking for reducing further the efficiency or increasing the efficiency, reducing the fuel consumption is very, very hard because we are already at a very, very high level. So we need a technology change. That's for sure. Similar to cars, for example, we're looking in electrification. Problem here is the energy source. So batteries are 1 or 2 magnitudes. There's the difference between what we need and what we get currently. So technology-wise, we are not there on that thing. Other possibilities would be hybrid propulsion. which means you have still one gas turbine, and that gas turbine would power then electric motors, which is more efficient, but still not 100% green, right? So it's a kind of intermediate step, I would say. Another approach are these power to liquid fuels, so artificial fuels. Lufthansa is also doing research on that. But here as well, you have to scale it. And I just checked some numbers. For the Lufthansa fleet, for example, you would need 200 wind turbines, 20,000 wind turbines, which is 2/3 of the wind turbines we currently have in Germany, just for powering our fleet. It's definitely an interesting technology to use, but it's not the solution for everything. So I would say in the future we have a couple of solutions coming up, and we probably have to use all of them.
Yeah, of course, there is a large variety of technologies that you have on your radar, right? And in addition to that, aside from the traditional short, medium, and long-haul flights, the topic of urban air mobility is currently gaining a lot of attention, right? So theoretical concepts for this are around for quite a long time. I do remember autonomous air cabs, projects like the City Airbus, volocopters, vertical takeoff and landing aircrafts. What do you think? How realistic is the scenario that we will soon see a significant proportion of ground traffic in cities up in the air?
And there's drones. For cargo lifting. That's another part of that story. My take on that is that we have here, especially in the environmental context, to see what makes sense. And currently, these kind of studies are more going in the direction what is possible from a technology point of view, but not really what makes sense from an ecological point of view, even if we have that big discussion in aerospace, how we get more environmental friendly. So my point of view is if you have a helicopter currently and you proxy that by an volocopter, City Airbus, Lilium, just to name the German ones, that's a good idea, probably. Of course, you cannot proxy every helicopter mission by that, so it's more the missions which are in a certain range, so a smaller range. But that's technology-wise possible in 2 to 3 years, I guess. If you then looking a little bit further on the topic, like you mentioned, like in flying taxi or flying car, and you want to proxy millions of cars with these devices, I have to say that makes, from an ecological point of view, no sense at all. So you have to, from my point of view, if you want to tackle global warming as an industry, as an aerospace industry, we can't afford to have these kind of devices around in the future in the scale of millions, right? So we have to be cautious here and to see how to combine different traffic systems to a good one, right? So trains, electric cars, aircraft, each has a certain purpose, but we shouldn't start proxying cars or trains even by little flying devices. That doesn't make, from an energy point of view and therefore from ecological point of view, no sense at all.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a question of physics, right? The solution probably, with the smallest energy consumption in total will prevail, right? So it's not about a specific vehicle or a group of vehicles, but rather a question of global energy consumption. But doesn't that add too much complexity? You know, having trains and electric cars, and then also adding flying vehicles to that?
I'm not sure if this adds complexity, because if you're looking at the scenario we are discussing people coming, for example, from a flight Hamburg to Munich, and then you have to switch anyway. Your device, your vehicle. So if you switch now to an electric car, to a train, or to an volocopter, doesn't really make any difference, right? Volocopter and all the others are currently forecasting that they solve problems of today in the future, meaning they're saying, okay, in X years, we are solving the issue of traffic jams, for example, in big cities, and therefore we are important. I'm not really agreeing with that business case analysis, because also land-driven transportation systems are developing. So trains getting better, getting probably also more individual. So you have probably more trains and then smaller trains, everything automated. Similar with cars, right? So cars getting probably autonomous. Therefore, traffic jams should be more manageable at the very end. So all these problems you currently have with our traffic system will be better in the future as well on the land side. And then the question is really, as you said, about physics. Flying needs always more energy than land-driven vehicles. So you have to be as efficient as possible, compared what you're getting in what you save in time at the very end. And there's probably somewhere a sweet spot, and I don't see that that for most of the people, the sweet spot is flying. Of course, there's people, these super rich people or rich people, who currently also need flying helicopters, for example, to get to Munich Airport or from Munich Airport. And therefore, these devices will be a solution. But as I said, it's always about scale, and I don't see the scale of millions of these things flying around. Similar, by the way, for cargo transportation. I don't see that my pizza is coming with these kind of stuff. I don't see why not a land-driven drone is taking that delivery. That should be possible as well. If you're talking about transportation, for example, blood from one hospital to another hospital, that's currently a case we're testing in Hamburg together with us. That makes sense because it's very time critical in this case, and there's a smaller scale.
Yeah, it's great to discuss some of these real life use cases. They're all interesting, I guess, right? Now, you being the head of corporate foresight and market intelligence, your job, and of course the job of your team, is to identify, to describe, and to analyze emerging trends and technologies at an early stage. And with that insights, you are providing consulting information to your innovation community and strategy departments at Lufthansa Technik, right? Now, let's have a look inside your department. How are you organized, and how are you actually connected to the other departments?
So we are organized as a department more or less in 5 teams. So we have the innovation team, the strategy team, then the betriebliche Vorschlagswesen, which is a German thing that if you have an idea how to get your workplace better, you can send it to that department.
Yeah, I think it's called continuous improvement processes, I guess. Yeah.
It's not, it's a little bit innovation, but on with a working council defined process. So it's as I said, it's a very German thing. And the patent department and us. So the foresight and market intelligence department. And I would consider us as an internal think tank of Lufthansa Technik, coupling a little bit the innovation department with the strategy department. So on the one hand, we're providing insights to the strategy and M&A department. On the other hand, we're identifying, as you said, trends and technologies, feeding the innovation department. So a little bit the spider in the web. Hopefully.
Now, looking at the people in your organization, what is their background? Are they all technical people? Are they strategists? Are they managers?
In my team, we try to be as diverse as possible. As I said, as we try to work as a think tank, it's important to have all the different perspectives and bring them together and see the different aspects. Lufthansa Technik is a worldwide acting company. So we are not just looking at a German, at a European market. We are looking also to Asia, to Africa, to the Americas. So we need also cultural diversity. We need also diversity in our knowledge background, in our networks, in everything, more or less. So we have, to be more concrete, we have people with aerospace engineering experience, people who are more in general aspect firm with the industry. Then we have an expert who can actually certify stuff. So somebody with a very deep knowledge in what is actually possible to bring into an aircraft. But we have also people with business backgrounds, consulting backgrounds, so people who understand more the economics behind that. And of course, everybody is very interested in several fields in his private life as well. So you have to be a little bit interested in politics, for example, to understand also these kind of things. So yeah, we try to stay as diverse as possible. We embrace that actually, even if you don't get one opinion from your team, you get at least as much opinions as team members you have. So currently we are 6 people, 6 opinions, and hopefully at the very end, one good product, right?
Yeah. You know, the variety of methods in foresight is quite large, right? It ranges from trend and technology scouting to various scenario techniques, market intelligence, data-driven approaches, and software tools. Can you explain how exactly you and your team work? For example, what is a typical process you follow when working on your topics, if you have one, of course?
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of strict processes because I think innovation topics are too unique each time that you actually have a benefit from a certain process. I'm a big fan of a process if it comes to writing your final product, your documentary at the very end, right? So if you want to transport the information to others, you should stay to a certain standard, because then it's easier for yourself and also for your customers at the very end. But gaining that information, you have to be very flexible also in your methods. So you mentioned a couple of them, for example, scenario work, which is, if you do it right, a very complex kind of work. So we have that, we use that, but that we use maybe every year, maybe every 2 years, because it's such a huge thing. Then we have a scenario light complex process, I would say. So something a little bit more flexible. So we're getting, for example, a question from our CEO and have to answer within a certain time frame, let's say a week or two. And then that process is too heavy. So you have to have a process which is a little bit more light, but comes in the direction of that. Scenario work is actually, from my point of view, currently one of the best processes because it gives the other person, your customer, a good feeling about different options. So they don't get one opinion, they get several opinions and can somehow navigate their own opinion out of that. On the software side, we're currently using your tool, which is, from my point of view, the heaviest process we currently have, because it's mainly for documentation and communication. But we also try to use, for example, AI to get information in fields where we are not experts. So in fields where we are expert, we are still beating the AI. In fields where we are not, AI can help. And of course, we have paid sources, unpaid sources, so professional networks. Personal communication is key from my point of view in that kind of job. So telephone, video conferences, real conferences after COVID, hopefully real conferences. On Monday, for example, the Consumer Electronics Show, starting in Las Vegas, which is a standard appointment for me normally, because this is one of these non-aviation events where I have the feeling I gain a lot of feeling, I would say, about where the journey is going. It's not really about the actual products I see. It's more having the feeling, having the talk with all the different experts from all these different industries. What is currently their issues? How are they processing in certain technologies like autonomous driving, for example? It's nice to see all these prototypes, but it's far more interesting to talk to the engineers, and SaaS is one of these events where you actually have the opportunity to talk to the real experts, not just to the sales staff.
So it's all about keeping the funnel very open in the beginning, and then nailing it down as you go. What about your decision process? How do you decide whether an emerging technology is worth further investment, whether you will be a first mover, or whether the risk is maybe too high and you will let others go first?
I would say it's a mixture between stomach feeling and business cases. I would love to say it's always a business case, but you know how it is, especially if you're talking about very far away emerging technologies. You have no idea how the business case will turn out. So in this case, you have to start with a stomach feeling. Maybe not just one stomach feeling. Therefore, for example, the technology radar system of ITONICS is very, very good to invite people to give judgment and to document that judgment, which is very important. I mean, asking people is easy, but documenting everything is not very liked and therefore hard process. And getting kind of crowd intelligence into that, getting a broader stomach feeling at the very end. And then looking what fits to the strategy of the company at the very end. So there's beautiful technologies, but somehow it's not fitting to our business cases and overall. So this is nothing for us then. And then deciding on a regular basis if these technologies going actually forward or even backward, because this is one of the things a lot of people have not really on their radar, that technology not always goes from A to B to C. Sometimes you have to get a step back. And therefore it's important to understand where your limitations are and why you decide in which direction. So documenting all of that is very important to come back on a certain point and say, okay, maybe we have to revise our first opinion because of new developments.
That is an interesting aspect. Can you walk us through a concrete example of an emerging technology or a project of yours?
Let's take an unsuccessful case, because these are the cases we learn a little bit more than successful ones, I would say. I had a project called eTaxi when I started with Lufthansa Technik. The idea behind that is you get an electric engine into the landing gear of an aircraft to actually maneuver on the ground. So currently the process, if everybody is in the aircraft, you have a pushback. So external car is coming, pushing back the aircraft from the gate. Then the aircraft engine starts and you roll by the aircraft engine to the runway, and then you start. So the idea is to save fuel and money and having a little less environmental impact to actually have an electric drive in the landing gear that all of these processes can do. And looking at that, it's a very process heavy invention. So it's not just the technology of an electric motor. It's also all about the processes at the very end. And therefore you have to get an overall business case. And business case meaning on the one hand money, but the other case here is also CO2 footprint. So you have to calculate both at the very end. On the first idea, it sounds a little bit like, yeah, you save anyway fuel, right? But taking into consideration that you probably have to have more weight because that electric engine or the cabling, and at the very end, that power has to come somewhere. It's coming from we call that APU. So it's a little gas turbine at the back of the aircraft. So all that has to be on a certain size, certain weight, and you carry that during the flight. So you have a negative impact on flying, you have a positive impact on ground. And therefore you have to have a pretty complex business case at the very end. One of the most complex business cases I had probably in my career. And at the very end, that beautiful idea in the beginning turned out to be not profitable at all. On the money side, but also on the ecological side. So there was just too much ifs. And we put a lot of effort after the project because we did already quite a lot. So we did a lot on the technology side. We did a lot on the process side. We documented everything. That took us, I would say, half a year after the project, which is not really normal that you have so much time or you take so much time after an innovation project just for documentation. But it turned out pretty good because that kind of project is coming back a little bit like a zombie every 2 months, I would say. So every 2 months, a politician getting a similar idea or be somewhere in the world seeing a prototype of such a thing, or one of our airlines getting connected by one of these providers. And it's easy now to say, okay, I have the documentation and these are the limitations. If these 5 points in the business case fundamentally change, we can have another discussion. If these 5 points are not changing, we don't have a discussion because it's not worth it. So the overall business case for the documentation, I think it was worth it. So that really explains you how important documentation is, because otherwise what you find quite often in our business is that somebody in the company remembers, said, yeah, we did that 10 years ago. And I said, okay, so why didn't it work? I said, yeah, I cannot really remember. And the guy who actually managed it, he's not with us anymore. And yeah, but it's anyway a bad idea. no, it's not always anyway a bad idea, right? So maybe that unique thing, why it didn't work, changed. There was progress in a certain technology, or circumstances like regulations can change. And then it's getting interesting. But to preserve that knowledge is one of the very, very important things. Also especially for foresight, because you're judging very, very early, and things are changing a lot in the making.
Exactly. And I think in the beginning you mentioned that you are 5 different groups. Foresight, strategy, innovation, and so on. Now, who actually has the ownership on those topics? Do you start in your foresight team and then hand over to other teams? How are you actually interacting with each other?
And it's even more complex because we have also innovation teams in our product divisions. So they are more deep into their certain kind of business. For example, engine overhaul, which is one of the most complex businesses we do. So in this case, we have also to talk with these people. So it's important to talk. We don't have that certain point of overhand, because similar to what I said with processes, in general, it's quite hard to define that on a theoretical level and then have that. From my point of view, the projects which I have as little as possible from a time perspective in my team as possible are the best projects, because if something is really, really hot and people want to have it, are probably the most successful ones. But most of the time, they are also the low-hanging fruits, not the very far away technologies. On other technologies, you have to inform on a regular basis. You have to have a discussion about applications. Is it worse to have a moonshot project, or is it worse to have a little prototype, or even can we already bring it into the production on the shop floor, for example, or even into the aircraft? So it's on an individual basis, I would say. Discussion, people to people interaction is key here, and bringing these people from the shop floor or from the departments, bringing these stuff into the aircraft as early as possible into the process. Even if you just inform them, I mean, it's important for them to know what's coming, and it's for us important to get the feedback, because they are closer to the actual use case at the very end. And then taking together a decision, looking over the business cases, challenging, of course, the business cases, because I'm not an expert in every detail, for example, now in that engine shop, and they are not the expert in every technology available, right? So bringing the knowledge together, deciding together, putting up a business case, and then, of course, forcing also management to take a decision on investment. But before you can do that, you have to prove your case within the company, also ensuring the management to have several perspectives on that.
So there is a lot to do for the next few years, right? Summing this all up, the future of aviation most probably will remain on top of our agenda for many years to come, right? And I think this requires thought leaders who not only talk about green and utopian scenarios, but also, we need thought leaders that clearly state how things really are, that have a deep understanding of both use cases and technologies, and thought leaders that tell us what we can actually expect in the future. With your work at Lufthansa Technik, I think you're making a significant contribution to that. That's really great to hear. Before the end of this interview, I have two more questions. The first one is, and that is maybe more about your personal opinion. What will happen next in aviation? So what is the next step that we can expect?
I guess we will see that we come from that one technology we're currently using, so the gas turbine. We are coming to a more diverse technology field, I guess. So we will have certain technologies for certain use cases. So range and capacity are the scales we have to use in this case, I would say. So smaller range, smaller capacity, other technology than larger scale and larger range. So long range, flying over the Atlantic, for example, is going more in the direction of these artificial fuels, maybe. On a medium level, on capacity and range, we're looking more into hybrid propulsion, and very small capacity, very small range. We're going into these batteries, probably, battery technology. And then, as that technology evolves, probably the battery kind of stuff is evolving more and more into these larger and larger aircraft. So they can be a kind of leading the way prototype kind of thing, but they don't have to, right? If we come to a ceiling on that technology as well, maybe never happens. So I think the biggest change for the industry is that aircraft looking all the same, using all the same technology more or less as we use today, right? So an A380 is quite similar to an A220 now, the smallest one. It's just bigger, right? From the outside, it just looks bigger. But I think that will change a lot, and therefore everything has to get a little bit more flexible. So also airports and all these ground facility. Also, we as an MRO provider, we have to manage a more complex portfolio, and therefore we need processes adapting to that. So digitalization, of course, is one of the big topics, but we really, really need that also, because otherwise we can't cope with that complexity in the future.
Yeah, so that is quite complex to manage, I think. Sven, the last question for you is a personal one. Now, when you look back on your career at Lufthansa Technik, what was your greatest innovation rockstar moment so far?
It's a hard question for me, because I'm a person who looks always forward, not so much backward. And we had, not that far ago, we had a little celebration before all that COVID stuff appeared, 5 years innovation management in Lufthansa Technik, and as I was one of the first joining that journey, I had to bring up a presentation, and therefore I was looking back a little bit, and actually I experienced that we achieved far more than I had still in mind, right? So if you're somebody who's looking always in the future, 20 years, 30 years in the future, you somehow forgetting what you already achieved. In my case, the moments I remember the most are not really technology breakthroughs or things we actually achieved on that kind of level, implementation of use cases, all that kind of stuff. I remember more like events or certain moments with people. One of the things I'm really proud is my time in the Center of Applied Aerospace, which is a kind of building more or less in Hamburg, where every company in Hamburg related to aerospace is researching together. So a joint approach. I joined that as the site leader for Lufthansa Technik when the building wasn't even finished, and 3 years later you're sitting at your farewell party. And everything is filled up with prototypes and people. And, on the journey, you don't see that progress more or less. But when you have a certain time looking back, remembering moments with the team, these are the things, which makes that job so great, I would say, bringing people together and achieving something together. I think that's it. Because innovation needs good people.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. True. And I think that is a great wrap up. Sven, thank you so much for the inspiring insights into your work at Lufthansa Technik and also the deep expertise.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, to all of our listeners or the viewers of the video log, if you would like to get in touch with Sven to discuss the future of aviation or how they apply foresight and market intelligence in practice, check out our ITONICS LinkedIn profile. We will post this episode here along with a way to get in touch with him. And in addition, we now offer our Innovation and Sustainability Trend Report 2030 for free. And in this report, we describe many influencing factors that will probably shape the future significantly. And we also make a few recommendations for future action and inspiration for innovation. The download is now available on our website, itonics-innovation.com. Feel free to get your free copy there right now. And that's it. Thanks for listening. See you on the next episode.
Innovation Rockstars.
This was Sven Taubert from Lufthansa Technik in conversation with ITONICS CCO Dr. Christian Mulroth about the future of aviation. If you have any questions for Sven or want to leave us a comment or other feedback about this episode, just drop us an email at info@innovation-rockstar.com. For more exciting episodes of our podcast series, just visit our website at www.innovation-rockstar.com or browse through our Innovation Rockstars channel on popular platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts.